Hi everyone, I'm your structural anti-aging coach, Jessie. In the past 10 days or so, I've conducted several one-on-one structural anti-aging assessments. The ages of the participants range from about 35 to 68, and they came from all kinds of backgrounds. Some people have a regular exercise routine, some are very focused on skincare, some have already had cosmetic procedures, and some have never taken any anti-aging courses before. But during these 10 days of assessments, I discovered a surprising commonality. 100% of the people had concerns about nasolabial folds. For some, they're very shallow. For others, they're quite deep. Some people have asymmetrical folds, and for some, it's even more pronounced. Although the degree varies, everyone had nasolabial folds that connected to marionette lines. Nasolabial folds are an aging issue that everyone faces. And what's even more interesting, as I continued to dig deeper, I found that most people actually misunderstand nasolabial folds right from the start. So in today's video, I want to help everyone get a new understanding of nasolabial folds, because if you misunderstand the problem, all your efforts afterward might be headed in the wrong direction. Many people think nasolabial folds only appear as you get older, but in reality, that's not the case. From an anatomical perspective, everyone is born with them. The nasolabial groove is just very shallow and soft when you're young, so we don't think of it as a wrinkle. It usually only starts to become noticeably visible after the age of 30. Generally speaking, before the age of 25. For most people, nasolabial folds aren't very noticeable before the age of 25. Around the age of 30, you start to see slight changes. So what about after 35? Many people notice, oh, it's becoming more and more obvious in photos. After 40, the nasolabial folds start to become permanent. After the age of 50, many people find that their nasolabial folds get deeper and may even become one of the most obvious signs of aging on their whole face. So the participants in this assessment, who were between 35 and 68 years old, were almost all already in the critical stage of nasolabial fold development. But what's interesting is that the way nasolabial folds develop in Westerners and Easterners is actually quite different. Many Asian women, when they're young, have skin that looks great, with few fine lines and not many wrinkles, so they feel like they're taking pretty good care of themselves. But after 40, their nasolabial folds suddenly become very noticeable. Remember, I said they suddenly become obvious? Why is that? Because Asian people usually have thicker skin and more subcutaneous fat. When they're young, this fat makes their faces look full and plump. But as they age, these tissues start to move downward. So for many people, the appearance of nasolabial folds doesn't start with a few fine lines that gradually deepen over time. Instead, it's more like it suddenly gets deeper, like last year everything looked fine, but this year, how did it suddenly get so much more pronounced? Or sometimes, as soon as you hit a rough patch at work or in your career, the nasolabial folds just show up out of nowhere. Actually, none of this is really about suddenly aging overnight. It's the result of problems that have built up over the past decade or more. Of course, this includes structural issues, stress, and all sorts of problems piling up until they reach a tipping point. It all shows up at this moment. As for Westerners, their facial contours are usually more defined, their fat layer is thinner, and their skin is also thinner. Because of this, they're more likely to develop fine lines earlier, like crow's feet, forehead lines, and lines around the mouth. These often appear earlier than they do in Asians. However, nasolabial folds aren't necessarily their most obvious issue. So to put it simply, Asians are more prone to sagging type aging, while Westerners are more likely to experience atrophic type aging. And nasolabial folds are actually one of the most common signs of aging in Asian women. Next, I want to share with you a really important concept, something I found during these assessments that really needs to be corrected. A lot of people think that nasolabial folds are just wrinkles, so they end up using all kinds of expensive skincare products, but they don't necessarily see any results. Strictly speaking, nasolabial folds aren't actually wrinkles at all. They're called folds. Pay attention to the word fold, it's not wrinkle. Wrinkles, like crow's feet, forehead lines, and frown lines between the eyebrows, are different. These mainly occur due to the loss of collagen and elastin in the skin, which leads to decreased elasticity and is a sign of skin aging. But nasolabial folds are different. The word fold literally means a crease or fold. In other words, it's not a wrinkle that forms on the surface of the skin. Instead, it's the tissue that folds. The tissue above sags downward and accumulates with the tissue below, creating a groove in the middle. That's what we call the nasolabial fold. So when you see nasolabial folds, the real issue is usually with the tissue above the fold. This is also why so many people desperately apply skincare products, do endless facial massages, or even keep filling their nasolabial folds. But in the end, the improvement is very limited because they're only addressing the surface, while the real problem lies deeper. From the perspective of structural anti-aging, nasolabial folds are actually a structural issue. They reflect that the entire support system is starting to decline. For example, our breathing becomes shallower and the diaphragm doesn't move enough. The rib cage becomes increasingly stiff, the head gradually juts forward, and the tension in the neck keeps increasing, while the face is constantly being pulled downward. All these changes eventually show up as nasolabial folds. In fact, a lot of the time, the problem isn't even with the face itself, but rather with the body. It could come from collapsed arches in our feet, rotation of the pelvis, compensation in the spine, loss of mobility in the rib cage, or changes in our breathing patterns, all of which ultimately affect the position of our head and neck. This then affects the support for our face. So nasolabial folds aren't really a problem with the face itself. They're often a sign of an overall structural imbalance in the body showing up on the face. That's also why in the structural anti-aging system, we don't just focus on the nasolabial folds themselves. Because nasolabial folds are just the result. Structural imbalance is the real cause. If you only remember one thing today, I hope it's this. Nasolabial folds aren't just simple wrinkles. They're folds that form after the body's structure becomes imbalanced. When you start to understand it from the perspective of structure, breathing, posture, fascia, and the support system, that's when you'll truly find the right direction to improve nasolabial folds. If the timing just doesn't work out for you this time and you happen to miss this free assessment, that's okay. I've organized the main content of this assessment into a video, and you can just click the link to watch it. You can use the method shown in the video to do a self-assessment. The link is right in our comments section and description box. In the next video, I'll take everyone a step further to understand how to address nasolabial folds at different ages. And finally, don't forget to click subscribe and follow us. Stay on the right track, and I'll see you next time.